Hello once again and welcome back to It'll Be Alright in the 90s, the podcast where on Friday evenings we watch a double bill of The Simpsons at 6, followed by Robot Wars at 6:45. My name is Stu Joslin and I'm joined as always by my co-host Alex Greenwood. Greenie, how's it going?
Hi, Jos. Yeah, I'm doing okay actually. Thanks. I'm looking forward to this episode. Definitely.
Yes.
It's as with anything 90s, it's close to my heart, but this is especially close to my heart. So as I know it is for you as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. And again, looking forward to this. This is one of those subjects I need no encouragement to talk about. I could talk about this forever, and I do. So I'm happy that we've chosen to cover this today, and I'm sure it won't be the only episode we do on this. I'm sure there's plenty of meat on this particular bone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is a T-bone steak. Is that something that's got a lot of meat on it? I'm a vegan, so the meat, I should just stay away from those sort of meat analogies. But let's just say T-bone steak.
So to put the listeners out of their misery, we are of course talking this evening about the greatest show of the 90s, but possibly the greatest TV show of all time. What do you think?
Up there. I think it's the greatest comedy of all time. Definitely, it's hard to compare it with something like The Wire or The Sopranos, but I think it's peerless in terms of comedy. Myself,
absolutely. We are of course talking about The Simpsons. Now, if you heard our first episode, which was to do with our favourite football kits of the 90s, we've chosen to go down a similar route with this. So we've both chosen our top three, and then we've also chosen an episode that it's difficult to say worst or an episode we hate, because with the era of The Simpsons we're talking about, there aren't really that many episodes that fall into that. I mean, there's hundreds of them now, but yeah. back in the era that we're talking about, there aren't really that many that you could truly say are awful. So we've just chosen episodes, both of us, I think, that we don't particularly care for, or we would be happy to skip over if they, if they come up on Channel 4, we're switching it over to watch the snooker on Free Sports or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I guess with the 90s, we were limited to. Well, I was a little bit surprised. I had an idea that The Simpsons was on in the 80s more than it was, but there's actually only one episode that aired in the 80s. The first episode,
which the very first episode, yeah.
Yeah, it's like this. It was a Christmas one, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. 89. So we're confined by the second. At one end is the second episode of the first series, and then the final episode of the 90s was Series 11, Episode 9, which aired in 19th of December 1999. So a good 11 and a half series or so there to choose from.
Indeed. And as I said, it's definitely the golden era of the show. I think it's agreed season 2 to about season 4 or 5, I think, is the real golden era. So we've got all the good stuff here to talk about. My personal introduction to the show, as I alluded to it at the top of the show in my introduction, was on the BBC Two midweek evening showings. When I first started watching it, when I first noticed it, it was one episode on a Monday and then a double bill on a Friday. And then it went a little bit later on. It went to one episode every weeknight, as it has then gone on to be on Channel 4 for many years after that.
Yeah.
But that's the first time I got introduced to the show, and then I started obviously videotaping them and things like that, and just watching it every single time it was on, and it became a real thing for me, and it's carried on throughout my life. So as I said, I'm really pleased we've decided to talk about it today. How about you? Can you remember your first introduction to the show at all?
Oh yeah, 100%. I can remember the first episode that was on. It was the first episode that was aired in the UK, and I watched it. I guess there was quite a lot of hype. It was The Simpsons was famous, kind of relatively famous in this country. Everyone knew about it, but no one had really seen it unless you had Sky, and I didn't have Sky, so I did have to wait for it to come to BBC Two. Mm-hmm. And the first episode that I saw, I cannot remember the name of it. It's I think it's episode 6 or 7 of the first series, I think, and it's an episode where the Simpsons basically go to family therapy with Marvin Monroe. They end up with the electric shocks at the end. That's the first episode. I can't remember what it's called, but I think
I can tell you. I think it's called "There's No Disgrace Like Home."
Yes, that's it. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. It is series 1, isn't it?
It is series 1. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure why that was the first one they showed in this country, but yeah, that was my first memory.
Great stuff. Shall I go first? I think you went first on the football kits.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay. I'll head away on this one then. So, first of all, the episodes that I've chosen for my top 3 all aired within 18 months of each other, and also I've got 2 episodes that are actually consecutive in their running order. So that's how closely my episodes are bunched together. But my third episode in my top 3 is an episode called Krusty Gets Cancelled. It's the last episode of season 4, and it aired for the first time on the 13th of March 1993. 13th of May 1993. Sorry, we need to get these facts right. We don't want people writing in, do we?
Oh, no,
to our new email address, which
well, actually, we do want them writing in, but not to correct us.
The reason I've chosen this show is twofold, really. First of all, for better or worse, I'm going to admit it to you now in a safe space, Greenie. I'm a big Red Hot Chili Peppers fan. It's a cross. It's a burden that I carry, and I can see you shaking your head at me.
No, I'm fine with that. As long as it stops after Californication, I'm fine with that.
Well, maybe we can include By the Way as well. But listen, that's another. I want to do an episode on chilies in the 90s, so we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Okay.
But this is the episode with the Chili Peppers featuring, as well as a lot of other guest stars. So for anybody who hasn't seen it, and if you haven't, why not? Krusty the Clown gets his show cancelled because there's a new children's TV show in town with a puppet called Gabbo, who takes over and takes all the ratings away. And Bart and Lisa combine with Krusty to put on a comeback special featuring the likes of the Chili Peppers, Bette Midler. I think Johnny Carson's involved, and there's a whole load of guest stars in this episode. This episode is featured, and you'll probably remember this as well, on a videotape that was released in the UK called The Simpsons Go to Hollywood. And you used to get them in Woolworths and places like that, and they were video cassettes with 4 Simpsons episodes on them, loosely based around a different theme. So The Simpsons Go to Hollywood was episodes with film parodies and things like that in it, and just episodes about showbiz, I suppose. I remember one called On Your Marks, Get Set, Dough, which was all sports episodes. I had one called TheSimpsons.com, which was sort of technology-based episodes. And I watched that episode a lot because I had the Simpsons Go to Hollywood tape. And it's probably one of the episodes that I've seen the most of, I would say. It also features one of my favourite skits of Simpsons history, which is when Krusty is on his uppers and he's got nobody watching his show. He's lost the rights to Itchy and Scratchy, to Gabbo, and he replaces them with a Soviet cartoon called Worker and Parasite.
Well, kids, this is where you would watch Itchy and Scratchy, except they're on the Gabbo show now. So, here's Eastern Europe's favorite cat and mouse team, Worker and Parasite.
So I love this episode. I say it's in my top 3, mainly for the Chili Peppers. I have to say that their appearance is funny. They're in the dressing room talking to Krusty, and Krusty's asking them to change the lyrics to give it away so that they don't have to censor them. And they all agree that the censored version is much better. Everyone can enjoy it. So yeah, Krusty Gets Cancelled. I love episodes with Krusty anyway. He's one of my favourite characters as well. So yeah, Krusty Gets Cancelled is number 3 in my top 3.
Very good, yeah. Series 4. I actually don't have any episodes from that series in my 3, but yeah, you're deep in the golden era there. So, of course it's. And Krusty, yeah, he's. I might not be as big a fan of him as you, but he is part of the makeup of the show, isn't he? So.
Well, do you know the sort of story behind the conception of the Krusty character?
No, I don't think I do.
He's supposed to be in the earlier shows. He was supposed to be like a big hero for Bart, but he looks a lot like Homer, like in his face and everything. And the joke was supposed to be that Bart hated Homer, but had a hero who looked exactly like Homer, but was just a clown.
Right.
But I think the idea got dropped pretty early on. I think that's right.
Yeah, that makes sense because he does look the same, doesn't he? I remember when I first started watching The Simpsons being a bit confused by that. The fact that they had really similar faces, and they're sort of Homer's patch of stubble. And what has Krusty got? What's Krusty got? I can't now.
It was clown makeup, isn't it? So I think he does have the muzzle thing, but it's like a different color. This is terrible.
Yeah. It's weird. Yeah. Now I've got to visualize it. I can't actually. But yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I had no idea about that. That's cool trivia. Okay. I'll go on to my first episode then. First aired December the 6th, 1990, season 2, episode 8. It's Bart the Daredevil. So
excellent choice.
This is an episode I chose. It wasn't the first episode I remember seeing because I've obviously discussed that already, but it was one of the first ones I remember seeing. It's definitely the first one I remember really loving. So just a quick synopsis. The Simpsons go to see a monster truck event featuring the Truckosaurus, the mighty Truckosaurus. And one of the events at this extravaganza is that there's a motorcycle stunt performed by a stuntman called Lance Murdoch, who's clearly heavily based on Evel Knievel.
Ladies and gentlemen, and especially little children, I'm glad you're all here to witness what may very well be my grisly death.
And seeing this, Bart is inspired to become a stuntman himself. So he starts off by just jumping over cars and his friends and stuff on a skateboard, but then he decides he wants to jump over Springfield Gorge. Homer tries to stop him, tries to convince him not to do it, but Bart ignores him and he goes. Instead of doing the jump, Homer catches up with him, convinces him not to do it, but then inadvertently goes over the jump himself because he stood on the skateboard. So yeah, I chose it because, like I said, it's one of the first ones I remember loving. I remember talking about it with all my friends in at school, and it's just it's a heavily sort of slapstick focused episode. It's for gags. There's not a lot of depth. There's not a lot of sort of emotion in it like some of the other episodes, but it's a fairly simple storyline. It's just a one storyline. It doesn't have sort of multiple things going on at the same time like some of the episodes did. But it's just the visual gags I think are as good as they've ever been in The Simpsons. The like Lance Murdoch's jump over the tank of water. So he's jumping over a tank of water at this event, and the things that are in the tank. I don't know if you can remember any of them, Jocelyn. Can you remember what's in the tank?
There's some flaming hoops.
I think he jumps through flames. Yeah, he jumps through flames initially, and then...
there's the shark-infested water. Is
Yeah.
there a dog do stick as well?
no, I think that might be a different episode. It's a
Okay.
tank. So yeah, it jumps through flames, I think, first, and then in the tank of water, they show them tipping in the animals in there, and it's a great white shark, electric eels, piranhas, alligators, and then they finish off with the king of the jungle, a ferocious lion. So they tip this lion into the water, which is obviously kind of daft, but then it shows them all swimming around in a circle, and you can see the lion there, and then Lance jumps over. He completes the jump, then celebrates, but then he comes back to celebrate, and that's when he falls in. And then, of course, it's as he's crawling out, it's the lion that grabs him, and it's that sort of just complete circle of that gag. It's kind of simple. Yeah. It's not trying to over-explain stuff. It's a bit silly, but it's just amazing. It's a bit silly, but it's also a bit clever. And and then obviously there's one of the, if not the most famous bit of Simpsons slapstick, I think, is Homer doing the jump and then falling down the gorge, like banging his head all the way down, getting hit by the skateboard, gets dragged out, bangs his head on the way up. Ambulance crashes. He falls out the back, goes straight back down. Yeah, it's mindless, but it's just genius. It's that sort of slapstick Simpsons at its best, I think.
Yeah, my whole favourite part of that, I was going to mention it if you didn't, was when they put him in the ambulance and it immediately crashes into the tree.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Yeah. No, excellent choice. Well, I will then move on to number 2 in my list. Now, number 3 was Series 4, Episode 22. My second choice is Series 5, Episode 1. So it's the next episode along. And it's from the 30th of September, the same year, 93. And it's Homer's Barbershop Quartet.
Oh, yes. Absolute classic.
Yeah. Now, again, this is one that I remember watching over and over again when I could. I didn't have it on video, but when I could see in the TV guide and see it was coming up, I always made an appointment to watch it. The whole thing is essentially a pastiche of the Beatles story from beginning to end, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even down to the rooftop concert on Moe's bar at the end when they all get back together.
Yeah.
And I think they're all wearing the same clothes as the Beatles did on that rooftop concert as well. So it's even down to that detail. There'd been a change of writers over the over the change of between those seasons. So it's a different team, series 4 and series 5, and I think in that episode you can tell there's a bit of a difference in tone as well, and where, as you said earlier, some of the earlier episodes have got some great slapstick in them. I think it marks a change towards pastiches and looking at popular culture and things like that, and going more that way. I don't really have many notes on this one, to be fair. It's just an excellent episode. I'll always sit down and watch it. I love the B Sharp story. Chief Wiggum getting let out in the forest and being told to run along is a great moment.
Where we going? Where we going?
Run along, boy. You're free now.
No! No! No!
It's just a where's my toothpick in the toilet? Sorry, listeners. Sorry about that.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That bit. I wasn't going to do the impression. Thankfully you did that, but that was a moment that stood out. Yeah, I love it as well. It's I'm fascinated by the Beatles story. If you'll forgive me talking about something that's pre-90s, but I am fascinated by the Beatles. So the combination of the two is great, and I think anyone has any passing interest in Simpsons probably will know that episode.
Yeah, I do have a slight problem with it in one way though, which is if Homer was in a world famous group, even for briefly, brief amount of time, why isn't he being mobbed everywhere he goes in Springfield along with the rest of them? Like, they've all. And I think at the end, Principal Skinner goes back to school and he's like, well, that was a wild summer break, and it's all supposed to have happened in a space of like 6 weeks or something, But listen, this is a cartoon, isn't it? It's we bend the rules, and we don't look too hard at that sort of thing, do we? So
no.
I think we'll let them get away with it.
Yeah, I think it is an example of, like you say, with the writers have changed, that they did start to move, especially as they ran out of ideas, like much later, start to move towards these slightly high concept things. It's more than just the family story. It's something a bit beyond. So you can see this is one of the first, if not the first, sign of that starting to happen, isn't it? Just expand the universe a bit.
Cool. So yeah, that's my second choice, Homer's Barbershop Quartet. So what do you have in the corresponding position?
Yeah, my number 2 is from the same series as my first episode. It's actually only 5 months apart from my first choice. Series 2, episode 19, aired in April 25th, 1991. It's Lisa's Substitute. So this is just a quick synopsis again. It's a very simple story. It's actually 2 storylines, an A and a B storyline, both quite simple. The B storyline, which is maybe the light relief of the story, is Bart running for class president against Martin. And so Bart is a populist choice, but then all the class loves him apart from Martin and one of Martin's friends, but then none of them end up voting for him because they don't bother, so he loses the election. And I was wondering whether there was a bit of satire there or some political point being made by the writers. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I don't know what the state of American politics was at that point, but so that's the B story.
There has to be something there, doesn't there? There has to be something. I would think.
Something about populism and people not voting, and I guess there's also just a simple moral there about not resting on your laurels. But the A storyline, which is what the episode's named after, is also really simple. It's just Lisa's usual teacher, Miss Hoover, is off on long-term sick leave, so there's a which later turns out to be psychosomatic. So the class gets a substitute teacher in the guise of called Mr. Bergstrom, who is voiced by Dustin Hoffman. Interestingly, using the alias Sam Ethick, as in Semitic, because the character and also Dustin Hoffman are Jewish. But he used an alias because he didn't want to be associated with being in a cartoon at that point of his career, apparently. I don't really understand why he did The Simpsons if he didn't want to be associated with a cartoon. But maybe he just knew that one day The Simpsons would be, held up as this incredible thing that it is. So that's why he did it with some forethought. But there's this substitute teacher who really inspires Lisa and is really just it completely changes her view of education and teaching. And then inevitably, when Miss Hoover comes back, the substitute teacher, Mr. Bergstrom, leaves, and results in this really beautiful scene where Lisa runs to the station to sort of say goodbye.
Now boarding on track 5, the Afternoon Delight,
Bergstrom!
stopping at Shelbyville.
Hey, Mr. Bergstrom!
Hey, Lisa.
Hey, Lisa, indeed.
What? What is it?
Well, I mean, were you just gonna leave?
And that, I mean, that's the main reason I chose it. Really, is because it is. I think it's the most beautiful episode of The Simpsons ever, and maybe one of the most beautiful episodes of any TV show ever. Not just for that ending, but for all the way through it. It's not a convoluted or high concept story. It's a really human story about what it's like to grow up. It's a kind of a form of coming of age story, really, and I love coming of age stories. And yeah, it sounds like I'm getting choked up because I'm talking about the episode, which is only partly true. Well, it's just a simple story, a student who is really inspired by a teacher who ends up leaving. So there's obviously themes around loss and growing up and the pains of that. I don't think I think almost everyone can relate to the story in some way. It might not be a substitute teacher that you had, but almost everyone has had at least one teacher who really inspired them. And then obviously the nature of growing up and education is that you have to leave them behind or they leave. I know I had a teacher at school. Hello, Miss Gutman, if you're listening, but I never forgave you for leaving. But so, yeah, there's that, I think, that just real human story that we can all relate to. And I just that final, well, it's not the final scene of the episode, but the final scene where Mr. Bergstrom says goodbye to Lisa, hands her a note. I mean, you'll probably have seen it. If you haven't seen it, again, why not? But I won't say, just in case you haven't seen it or you don't remember, you should go back and watch it. And he hands her a note, and it's beautiful. And when you see it again, you'll see what he says. But it's just, I think it's just a really touching, well-written, simple episode.
Yeah, I'm so glad you chose this because it was close to being in mine as well. And I say the moment at the end where he hands her the note is one of the moments where my wife will tell you that I cry at anything. We watched a film called Coco the other week. I don't know if you know this.
God, I mean, anyone who doesn't cry at that then
absolutely destroyed me. I mean, we had been on like a hike earlier on in the day, so I think I was tired and emotional. But no, an absolutely fantastic episode. Just to hit on something else you mentioned there, I obviously joined. We went to the same secondary school, but I joined a few years after you, and the fact that I know about Miss Gutman, despite the fact that she had left way before I joined, the revered tones in which she was spoken about by obviously my friends in your year group is goes to show that she was quite a character.
I'm just
But we can move on. We can move on if it's going to affect you too much.
Yeah, we should. One little I thought was really interesting. A little note in this episode was that Lisa obviously was quite early actually, was the sort of moral voice of the family and the program as a whole, which is one of the reasons why she's one of my favorite characters. But there was in her bedroom there's an end apartheid poster on the wall in the background, which I thought was quite strong is the wrong word, but it's quite forward by the writers and the producers to put that in the background. I really liked that little point. And another little thing I noticed was that when Mr. Bergstrom introduces himself to the class, he does that by bursting into the classroom, firing cat guns. And I thought that probably wouldn't fly post sort of Columbine era, would it?
Not now, no.
But,
times change.
Yeah, different times.
That's one thing that's probably best left in the 90s is it's the use of toy guns in classrooms.
Yeah.
And number one for me, and this is the episode that if I could only take one episode, this would be it. This was the criteria by which I judge this. It's Series 3, Episode 17 from the 20th of February 1992, and this is called Homer at the Bat.
Yes.
So, in this episode, Homer is playing for the power plant's softball team against the various other softball teams of Springfield. They begin to do very well, and they get to a final showdown against the Shelbyville power plant. At this point, Mr. Burns, who has previously shown no interest in the softball team whatsoever, makes $1 million bet with the owner of the Shelbyville power plant on the result of the game, and then hires several Major League Baseball players to replace the team who have done so well for him so far in the season and try and win the game. All of the players that he hires can't play the final game in mysterious circumstances. Something happens to each one. And I was going to do a little bit of a quiz with you, mate. Can you remember all of the Major League Baseball players and what happens to them?
I definitely can't remember their names apart from, is it Darryl Strawberry is one of them?
Yes. So Darryl Strawberry. Yes, he's the player who plays in Homer's position, and he's the only one who avoids being otherwise engaged and can still play the game. Okay. Homer's the only one who ends up still sat on the bench.
Oh yeah, I know that I can remember that someone fell down a pit, like a bottomless pit or something like that.
That's right, Ozzie Smith at the Springfield mystery spot.
Yeah. There's one of them who gets some sort of gigantism or something. Their head swells up massively, which is a brilliant visual gag. Yes. I can't remember exactly why. And then there's someone who Mr. Burns keeps asking him to shave his sideburns, even though he's not got any left. So just keeps shaving his head higher and higher, his hair higher and higher. They're the three that I remember.
So it's Ken Griffey Jr. who's drinking Mr. Burns' brain and nerve tonic that he gives him when he decides to start coaching the team, and that causes a gigantism. It's Don Mattingly who I don't know what you think sideburns are, Mr. Burns. He keeps asking to trim those sideburns, and eventually, he just shaves like his head from side to side.
Mattingly, get rid of those sideburns.
What sideburns?
You heard me, hippie.
Steve Sachs, I think, gets arrested by Lou and Eddie, and is charged with every unsolved murder in New York City. Jose Canseco saves a woman from a burning building, but is like bringing out all of the furniture and arranging it in the front garden. Mike Socia gets radiation poisoning from actually working at the power plant because he actually wanted to work there. And Wade Boggs gets knocked out by Barney in Moe's.
Oh yeah.
Over who the greatest ever British Prime Minister is.
Who do they say? I don't remember that. Who do they say? Do you remember?
I think it's Barney says it's Lord Palmerston, and Wade Boggs says it's Pitt the Elder.
Right.
But obviously, I'm a big sports fan anyway. So this one really strikes a note with me. There's a great song at the end as well, which I never realised until researching for this episode of the pod, that the song at the end is sung by a guy called Terry Cashman, and it's called "Talking Softball," and the lyrics are all about the team and how they eventually do win the game. But spoiler alert, sorry. But the original song was called "Talking Baseball," and it was about the history of baseball. And they actually got Terry Cashman, who was the artist who recorded it, to record a special version for this episode.
Yeah, that's great.
It's just a lot of fun. The writer John Swartzwelder, I think, was a big baseball fan and wanted to do an episode around it, so got his way with this. And it's just a lot of fun. And I'll always sit down and watch it if it's on. And I would say it's my favourite episode.
That's fair enough. I'm definitely going to go and rewatch that again. Well, I didn't do my three in order as such. I mean, they were in the order that chronological order that they were released. But so my last one is not necessarily my favourite, but it's the latest one. It was aired May the 19th, 1994, season 5, episode 22, Secrets of a Successful Marriage. So this is the episode where Homer comes to realize he's told by Moe that he's slow during this card game, in a very funny scene, which I'm not going to describe because it won't do it justice. But because he's sort of come to this realization, or he's led to believe that he's slow, he decides he's going to go and take an evening class. But when he goes to the adult education centre, he sees all the other classes going on, and he thinks that he would be good at as being a teacher. So he decides to run a class instead. And the only thing he can think to do is to talk about how to have a successful marriage, which then leads to him giving away too many personal details and secrets about his relationship with Marge. So Marge throws him out, they separate, and then they reconcile at the end. And I've chosen this simply for the gags. At least definitely the first half of the episode is probably the highest concentration of laughs I think I've ever got from a Simpsons episode. There is I mean, there's just some classic moments. All I have to say to you, I think, is 2 perfectly good jackets, and then you'll know what I mean. It's
Yes.
one of those so often quoted Simpsons moments, and also maybe one of the funniest 60 seconds of The Simpsons is when Homer is looking at all the other classes that are being run at the centre, and much like you asked me, Giles, I'm going to ask you in a quiz fashion if you can remember the 3 classes that he observes when he goes to the centre.
Right. And again, these aren't in order, but I think I can do it. So, obviously, there's Moe's defensive funk dancing.
Yeah.
You just give him one of these.
Yeah.
And then he gets a gun out of the
Yeah.
The guns again. You've got, is it Lenny, How to Chew Tobacco?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. The ping indicates.
Yeah.
And my favourite, which I was going to mention if it didn't come up, is Hans Moleman eating an orange.
Yeah.
Just eat the damn oranges.
Yeah, exactly.
But
all of them are
I
great.
totally agree with you. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, there's one other actually, which is Patty and Selma running a course called How to Turn a Man into Putty in Your Hands.
Of course.
Which is also great. But it's those laughs. There's one bit that I noticed, I think maybe made me laugh the most this on the rewatching it, which is a sort of just one of those slightly odd, funny little moments you get in The Simpsons, where Homer is talking to the person who's running the center, and he's trying to convince him to give him this teaching position. And I can't do an impression of it, but Homer just says, we'll insert a clip here if possible. If not, I'll edit this whole section up. Just Homer does this little thing, and I love it.
We need someone to teach a course on how to build a successful marriage.
I'll do it. Anything to get me out of that house, away from all that nagging and noise of a family of love. Sha-la-la-la.
It's just funny. It's the funniest episode that I could think of. So that's why I chose it.
Oh, great stuff. And well, a great choice as well for that slot. It's, brilliant. Let's talk briefly about our choices for the episodes that we'd skip over, shall we say? Like I said at the top, it's not a case of saying that we hate it or it's the worst, because it's difficult to do that with this era of The Simpsons. But my particular one, Series 6, Episode 3 from 25th of September 94. It's called Another Simpsons Clip Show, and it's the second clip show that they did. And you might remember this is the one which has got a sort of romantic theme running through it, and it's just various clips of the love stories that have been told in the series over the years. So there's Marge and Homer at the prom, Marge's mum nearly getting married to Mr. Burns, and Grandpa stopping it right at the end.
Yeah.
There's Jacques, the bowling instructor, obviously, and my favourite clip in the episode is a rerun of Fuzzy Bunny's Guide to You Know What, if you remember that. I don't know which episode it's from originally.
Yeah.
It's the sex ed clip that
Yeah.
they're shown in the class.
I remember that.
I say it's not a case of disliking it entirely, but and it is nice to see those clips again. But it's just you'd always rather take an episode with a full story and a new episode over a clip show, I guess. So that would be my choice. If I had to abandon an episode to never see again, that would probably be the one.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think the clip shows are a good shout because it's not original material. It makes sense. I mean, even though they're clips from classic episodes, it still kind of makes you just think, well, I should just go back and watch those episodes individually because you get the context. So I think that's a good shout. I so rarely watch later Simpsons episodes. Are they still doing them? Do you know? Do they still quite regularly do clip shows?
I don't know. Presumably. But then again, in the modern era, I suppose animation is a lot easier to sort of do now, isn't it? So they might not have to do that in order to create new material. But no, I stopped watching around season 26 or 27. There was an episode where it's a non-Halloween episode where the whole family get kidnapped and taken to Kang and Kodis's home planet, and the whole thing was just stupid. And I thought, I'm out now. And I've not seen a new episode since. So
well, you did well to get that far. You really did. Because that brings me on to my choice, because I was quite when we decided to do this, and we decided to try and choose the worst episode of the 90s, I thought, this is going to be impossible because all the episodes of the 90s are great. But actually, I hadn't realised that the drop off was earlier than I thought. So, and like I said at the start, the 90s ends with sort of midway through series 11. So I looked back at series 10 and 11, just skimmed through, and I didn't actually recognise quite a lot of them, or couldn't remember them anyway. But I did find one that I might. I mean, this is maybe silly, and maybe you'll chastise me for choosing this one, but I'm not sure if I'd ever seen this one before. But I chose it because I think it represents the decline of The Simpsons, or where The Simpsons went downhill. And it's season 10, episode 18, aired April the 4th, 1999, and it's Simpsons Bible Stories.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just, it's not a clip show, but it's I guess it's a little bit like the Treehouse of Horror episodes, where it's split into 4 mini stories. The Simpsons go to church, it's really hot, so they all fall asleep, and they all have these different dreams, biblical-based dreams. So Marge dreams that she and Homer are Adam and Eve. Lisa imagines that she is leading the Hebrews out of ancient Egypt. Homer sees himself as King Solomon, and Bart dreams that has a dream based on David and Goliath. And it's just these 4 individual stories, and I suppose it's kind of the antithesis of Lisa's Substitute, which I talked about earlier, where that story has a real lightness of touch. It's really touching. It's got a real human story that it's easy to relate to. There's a lot of soul in it, and a lot of the family is sort of made up of individual characters with rounded personalities. Whereas this, it's just there's none of that, because obviously they're imagining themselves in this different world, but it just doesn't. There's no heart in it or anything. There's no soul. It doesn't feel like it's just kind of lazy writing. It's obviously based on other stories. And I think the most unforgivable thing about it is that it just didn't make me laugh at all. We're not yet at the stage of The Simpsons history for me by series 10, where it's so unfunny, it actually makes me angry. It's not that bad. It's just, I'm just indifferent to it. Like, there was maybe one moment where I raised a smile, but beyond that, there was nothing. And I just thought this represents, the episode itself might not be the worst. I mean, it almost certainly isn't the worst. Maybe not even of the 90s, but it just represents that sort of running out of ideas. So they're bringing in different concepts, trying to make it more surreal, but just not being funny either. And that's why in that way maybe I hate it the most, because it signals a point at which they've gone too far and they should have ended it. But this was this is probably a third of the way through the Simpsons run now. I don't know what series we're on now, but this is nothing. Series 10 is still quite early.
Well, I think we're past season 30 now, aren't we? So, I think you're right with about a third of the way through.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Flogging a dead horse by now is flogging the skeleton of a horse. This is like where they are now. So that's why I've chosen this one anyway. But it's horrible to be negative about The Simpsons. Sometimes it's better just pretend it did end after series 7 or 8, but...
Yeah, that's the model I try and follow anyway, generally.
Yeah.
I think that's it's a great place to sign off on, no doubt, what is going to be the first of many Simpsons episodes. I can think of a few guests that we both know who might like to come on and have their say about this. So
yeah,
I'm sure we can arrange that at some point in the future. Do you want to give us a quick reminder of the contact details if people want to get in touch with their favourite Simpsons episodes, or indeed anything else 90s related that they want to get in touch about?
Yeah, absolutely. You can email us on allright90s@gmail.com. That's all one word, allright90s. And I should say it's 90s spelt with letters, not 90s. It's all words, allright90s@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @allright90s. Again, all one word, all letters, allright90s. So yeah, let us know what you think about The Simpsons or otherwise.
Yeah, hit us up. And we will be back, no doubt, very soon with another 90s related episode for you to wrap your ears around. So until next time, take care. See you down the road. Bye for now.
Yeah, cheerio.